Good evenings, ladies and gentlemen. George Cohn from the Lest We Forget World War II Museum in Louisville, Texas. Tonight we're going to talk about some SS insignia that I received from an American veteran. So it's been some time, but you know, when the vets were alive, I used to always approach them and talk to them and give them a card and ask them if they had anything and if they were veterans. And one fella in a Mexican food restaurant here in Flower Mound, I gave him a card and he called me a few weeks later and we talked and he told me, he said, I've got a bunch of SS insignia. What? Anyway, I went over to his house and I interviewed him. He was an interesting man. I can't think of his name now. I'll find the documentation on his name and we'll revamp this. But he had been in the Texas 36th Infantry Division and he was somehow or another pulled out of the 36 and he became a pilot and he flew the Piper Cubs as a spotter for artillery. He was in the Normandy area. He went through northern France, and he said at the end of the war that he was in charge of the American guards that were guarding the SS that had been captured in and around Dachau. And when he told me this, he said to his wife, he said, Mama, go get that shoebox. And this lady, Grandma, comes over with the shoebox and she dumps it out on the table and all this stuff falls out. And I said, holy moly, where did you get that? And he said, well, you know, those SS guys weren't allowed to wear this stuff in the courtroom, and so they cut it off their uniforms. Some of them burned it. And he said, I made friends with some of them, and, you know, they gave it to me. And I thought, you know, hell, I'll just keep it. So I've had it all these years, and I asked him if I said, could I buy any of that? He said, oh, no, oh, no. And when we parted ways that afternoon when I left, when we shook hands, he pressed about 5 collar tabs into my hand, not letting his wife know that I got them. So I'd recorded the interview like I always do, and my standard operating procedure was I would always make a copy of the tape. This is back in the days of VHS, and I would give the vet a copy of it so his family had a copy of his World War II interview. Well, the wife called me about 2 weeks after the interview, and she told me that he died. And she told me about the funeral. So I went to the funeral, and in the bereavement line, I gave the wife the VHS tape for her husband interview. And afterwards she called me and she said, I'm throwing out his stuff, and I remember you were interested in that shoebox. If you want it, come and get it, or I'm gonna throw it away. So I asked her, I said, what do you like? And she said, I like Elvis Presley. And I happen to have had a newspaper from, I can't remember the name of the town, but the town of Elvis is from, the day after his death, when it was big and bold on, you know, front and headline news of his Tupelo or something like that, I can't remember. But it was a crisp, brand new newspaper that I had. And I carried that over there and I gave that to her, and she was over the moon. So I traded her that newspaper for all this SS insignia. I tried to give her some money, and she said, I was just going to throw it away. But if you don't want this Elvis Presley newspaper, I'll sure take it. Anyway, so let's just go through some of this insignia. All right, if you look at these cuff titles here, these are cuff titles that they wore on their left armband. The top two are Skanderberg. That's a 100% Muslim SS division that was created, I believe it was down in Yugoslavia, and they fought well against their natural enemies. But then the Germans took them to Russia, and once they got onto the front in Russia, they mutinied against the German officers and NCO'd. And I think they killed some of them. And so the Germans disbanded the division. The second is Nordland. Those are the Baltic countries, so Lithuania, Estonia, Latvia. Nederland is the Netherlands, or Holland. Viking is the Scandinavian countries. Prince Eugen is from Yugoslavia. SS Polizei Division is the 4th Division. Theodor Eiche is a regiment of the Death Head Division. Theodor Eiche was the first commandant of the Dachau concentration camp. He created the first concentration camp. And he was the general of the Death Head 3rd SS Division and was killed in the field in 1942 in combat, Theodor Eiche. He's also the guy, Ernst Röhm, if you know the story of the Night of the Long Knives, when Hitler had the SS go and raid the SA that were having a gay party, I believe. Anyway, they shot all these high-ranking SA guys, and they captured Enstrom, who was the head of the SA, and he had millions of men at his fingertips. Hitler was afraid of him, and they put him in prison, and Theodor Eiche walked in and gave him the pistol to shoot himself, and he didn't do it. Enstrom wouldn't shoot himself, so Eiche went into his prison cell and killed him. So then we have Reinhard Heydrich, who was the butcher of Prague in Frundsberg. Unfortunately, it looks like the bugs got that. A diverse group of collar tabs here. Mitch, I don't know if you want to swing down here and we'll look at this end. Concentration camp boards that are copper browned. Sergeant. These are Tanker, Leibstandarte, 1st SS Division, Germania, Sergeant Infantry, Propaganda, Leibstandarte, Nordland, Infantry, diverse Eagles for SS. This is a SS Guards armband. At the beginning of the war, you could not have a filling and be an SS soldier. You had to be a perfect physical specimen. But by the end of the war, more than 50% of the SS was non-German. Non-Germanic, I should say. They took volunteers from all over Europe. They were bled white because Hitler used them as a fire brigade. Anywhere it was hot, he sent the SS in, and they fought fanatically, and they died fanatically. They had huge casualty rates. So the Germans recruited people from all over Europe. There were people that joined the SS from Sweden, from Norway, Denmark, France, Belgium, Netherlands. There was 2 Russian SS divisions. This is a Russian SS division, and this is a Russian SS division. Imagine you're a Russian and you're in the SS fighting against Stalin, and then the Russians capture you. Your fate will not be good. It would be that of the Cossacks. Now this is an interesting one. This is for a camp guard. Okay, standard SS ruins. Death head. This is Italian or Russian. No, that's Russian. That's Italian. I'm sorry.